forward with what's next. Way back when, John, I used to produce his hour-long show that he used to do on this station.
I run into him all over Chester County.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, so there you go. How about that?
Well, he's a columnist for the Pro Football Network, but of course, we know his work with Inside the Birds. We steal Andrew DiCecco from him every single Thursday. We're now joined by the great Adam Caplan. Adam, good morning, man. How are you today?
Guys, good to be with you. Yeah, it's Eagles time. I'm on my training camp tour. I was with the Commanders yesterday. I'll be with the Eagles a couple days this week. But, yeah, we've got football back. I'm looking forward to it. The pads go on today. When I was with the Commanders yesterday, that was their first day of pads. So let's bring it on. It's going to be a good week.
What was that like? How are they handling camp? Because one of the big things for the Eagles this year that excites us, Adam, is that they're having a more physical camp, that there's more conditioning, not as many walkthroughs, which it seemed like Nick Sirianni ran last year. It looks like they're more physical this year, and I can't wait to get your report on it when you go. And today's day one of pads for the Eagles. But what was it like with the Commanders? Is it physical, or are they still kind of going through the motions like a lot of teams are these days?
All right, so Andrew, let me kind of explain what happens in pads versus no pads. So, first of all, very few teams hit. They just don't. When I would go to training camp when Andy Reid would be here, I could not wait for the first day in pads because I knew they were going to hit. Now, the hitting periods usually would be 5 to 7 minutes. It wasn't like they would hit for a half an hour.
Right.
But you knew it was going to be physical, as you mentioned, the physical play. Now, the Commanders, and I thought this was funny because I was thinking to be a 2-hour practice. I didn't get their schedule, so I just knew when I knew when it began. I was talking to some of the front office people. And then next thing I know, practice is over. It was over in an hour and 15 minutes. I was like, wow, what's going on? I said, is this an Eagles practice? Like, what's going on here? Because the Eagles under Sirianni, Andrew, they have some of the shortest practices in the National Football League for training camp. So what we're going to see today in pads is, first of all, again, there's no hitting. You'll see an elbow. It's called a thud. You'll see a shoulder. You'll see some pushing, but the player will not be taken in the ground. And talking to front office people and coaches, they're reluctant to give you who's great and who's not in training camp until the pads go on because really the first 4 days you can't, league rules, you can't be in pads until the fifth day. That's why Washington, the Eagles have only had 4 practices, folks. The Eagles had a walkthrough and they had a day off on Sunday. But today now, it's just there's a sense of, okay, here we go, let's go, and now the green light goes on. It's not, again, not their hitting. But as you said, it is more physical because, again, you could push a guy, you could elbow a guy, and I look forward to seeing that. And quite frankly, I'll be out west this week. I'm talking to the Raiders. I think they're going live. They're going to. I don't know if they're going to hit, but they're going to get more physical. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens today.
So, Adam, how has the quality of play, do you believe, across the NFL been affected by training camp decisions by organizations as to how they approach things, and how much of it is CBA related? That, it's that the players have relegated hard work out of their regiments of preparing for a season.
So, John, I would say this. When I first started covering the league in around 2000, you're talking about nearly 25 years ago, not only were there two-a-days, like maybe in the middle of the mid-2000s, the second practice would be special teams. It wasn't like that. Like, they would hit in the morning.
Sure.
And maybe they would have a regular practice, but maybe they wouldn't hit in the afternoon. Then it became morning, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, afternoon, special teams. Now, guys, it's completely changed. It's an hour and a half or less. It's not really intense. Although I would tell you with Eagles practice, we talked about this on Inside the Birds on yesterday's show. Man, they go quick. There's no standing around. One of the things, John, that I can't stand is when I go to training camp and players are just standing there doing absolutely nothing. This should never happen, considering practices now, for the most part, other than the Steelers who I'll visit and the Ravens I visit on Thursday, other than those two teams who practice 2.5 to 3 hours, by the way, it's just less, John. I think this is part of why personnel people tell me when we get to the regular season, John, I'm glad you brought this up because this is a factor. Teams don't practice hard. Well, guess what? They don't tackle well to start the season. To go on your question, I think it's a really good one. It does frustrate me sometimes when practice. I remember Sirianni's first year. There was one practice with 44 minutes. Like that. How could you get better when you're not practicing enough? As Dick Vermeil said, no team gets better without practicing.
Adam, you mentioned it. You've been covering the league for almost 25 years now, which is still 15 years less than what Vic Fangio has done in the NFL, which is amazing. Yeah. How important is Fangio with this defense that struggled last year, taking over the role of Sean Desai / Matt Patricia, but also kind of being the adult in the room alongside Nick Sirianni?
Yeah, Andrew, that was our big problem when Jeff Mosher and I on our show reviewed the season and the collapse. We gave you the 10 reasons, and people around the team thought that, yes, there were at least 10. It wasn't just the roster or one particular thing, but when you look at defense, Andrew, it's getting an adult in the room. It's not only Vic Fangio, and they've been running his scheme. Now they have the real Fangio running it. The assistants, they brought a bunch of guys in from college. Guys, I was told that there was a belief that the players were developing. And Vic, one of the things about Vic, and this is the first time I've seen him coach up close. I wasn't out in Denver when he was there. I was actually there with I saw him coach with the Niners when he was the D coordinator, but I don't remember, I don't have a frame of reference exactly what I saw. But I could tell you here he's being a little bit more creative than I thought. There have been the Kobe Dean, by the way, holy smokes, is a blitzer. Wow, and he looks much bigger physically, folks. He is jacked up. It's just anytime you get the guy who's the originator of a scheme, and by the way, a lot of teams use elements of Fangio's coverages, and they don't blitz a lot, though. Although I talked about Kobe Dean blitzing, they don't blitz a lot. But when you get the real McCoy guys, it's going to be better. And by the way, getting Kellen Moore, this guy's better an offensive coordinator. I've talked to coaches who work with Kellen. Very excited about what Kellen does, and boy, Hurts is really taken to the scheme. It didn't look like so in the OTAs, but now it does. So things are looking a lot better here. And I saw the question about the positivity. No, well, look, you can only go by what you see and what you know, and so far so good. Training camp.
When we talk about what Nick Sirianni is as a head coach, and you get to see so many by visiting these camps, you get to actually see not just coaches coach on a Sunday afternoon, but you get to see them instructionally coach and things like that. Where do you think Sirianni matches up well with his peers as far as how he handles things? And maybe if you have a doubt or you have a concern, what would it be?
All right, John, so let me start with the latter. You talk about the doubts. My concern, and this is a big one, he could not stop the bleeding when they lost 6 out of 7. They were embarrassed. They were not prepared for that Bucs game. I get it. A.J. Brown was not available. That certainly is a factor. But the defense quit. They were doing their own thing. I was told off of the coaching tape that you could tell that guys were not doing exactly what they should have done, certain players. And there was too much freelancing. Guys were going for sacks. It was really bad. I put that on Sirianni. There's a saying in coaching, John, when it's going on, you're letting it happen.
Yes.
And that's just something, I'm very close to a lot of coaches, and I've used that from a lot of them. And I get it. You're not going to solve it in 1 or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And Nick has had a chance to review the season and what happened. Now, him being the CEO, head coach, where he's clearly not his offense. He'll have less to do with the offense than ever. He'll be more of a Tom Coughlin coach. You know what? That's not a bad thing. Tom Coughlin, as a CEO, head coach, won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. So to get to the other part of your question, there's a lot that I like about Nick. His attention to detail. I've watched him. I'll give you an insight. So I visited them with the Browns 2 years ago. And yes, the Eagles roster is probably the best in my time covering them. That was probably the best roster in 25 years. Just phenomenal 2 years ago in 22. But I could tell you, watching him coach and get after his players, I like coaches who coach hard. They don't let stuff get by. They don't wait to, when Chip Kelly was here, John, Chip would wait. His thing was not to teach on the field. They would wait or not. He wouldn't stop practice. He would wait. They would just do it in the classroom. I don't like that. Correct something if you see it. Why would you not correct it? And Nick, if he sees it, he gets after his players, so I really like that. And he's got the respect of his players, but I am, to finish this off, this part, I'm still a little bit alarmed at how this team responded to him in that 6 out of 7 streak last season.
Last thing before we let you go, Adam, we always appreciate your time. Biggest offseason addition for the Eagles from a player standpoint, whether it's trade, free agent signing, or even draft pick, that you think is going to make an impact for this team where you saw that they desperately needed it last year?
It's going to be Quan Mitchell. I mean, there are others. There's no question Saquon Barkley's huge. But they were so bad at corner opposite Slay. And Slay, by the way, probably will wind up being the oldest starting corner in the National Football League this season. It's 33, turns 34 in January. But, man, James Bradbury's drop-off, Andrew, was just it's almost hard to believe. I've not seen that before. He was the second team on pro 2 seasons ago, and he completely fell off. I know Quan Mitchell, I don't worry about what happens within, the first 4 days, folks. It's the long haul. They didn't draft Quan Mitchell not to start. If he's ready, he'll start week 1, and they'll know. They'll know over the next 3 to 4 weeks whether he's ready. To have a guy who's explosive, and by the way, they're not using him as a traditional outside corner. He's played inside. He's played in the box as a linebacker. It's really interesting, as I was saying at the start of this, the way that Fangio is using him is not what I had seen. In fact, Mitchell's not really played like this in college at Toledo. So I'm fascinated to see how they could use him. And, folks, a lot of you listening are old enough to remember this, and I know that both of you are. When was the last time the Eagles got a first-round corner right? It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. Adam, listen, man, we appreciate it. We're excited. We'll be following all your work on Inside